Hello, it's Handler. If I remember my birth certificate. And is that a fucking feature? Anyway, welcome to learning how the damn spreadsheet works from the jargon, roster, database, contacts, and master folder. Keep in mind that I may not explain everything, such as the deeper workings of the code and formatting rules. If you want to know more about it, which I recommend, you can ask me or hope that any other person next in line understands. Right, so let's get a move on. First one is when we're going to deal with jargon. Jargons are important whenever I refer to stuff. When I'm referring to the sheets, what is this script, I'll only mention the important parts of the jargon or some parts in the database roster. Fuck. How about this? Let's start here. The toolbar. Now, the toolbar, it has the file, edit, format options, and all that doodads. They're mostly self-explanatory, and you can figure out those on the way to go. Now, we'll learn on the go as well while I'm explaining these, so I'll explain the mechanics of the some of the toolbars and the jargon as well. Now, first is the columns. The columns are indicated by letters A, B, and so on and so forth. Like here, A, B, C, D, and E, F, G, yada, yada. Now, the next one are the rows. The rows are indicated by numbers. 1, 2, and so on. So, for example, if I say column F, that will select everything in column F, like the names and all that shit. And the row 6, if I say row 6, it will select everything in row 6. Everything from the UID, hashtag, rank, name, and so on and so forth. Now, if I say F6, which indicating the value, name, or whatever's inside that F6 is, or that square. Now, that square is called a cell. Now, inside that cell is a box or square of the content, and the content we call in F6 is called the value. Text, numbers, formula, all of them are called in an umbrella term called value in the cell. Now, if you notice on the top corner left of the below the toolbar, that is called the name box, which indicates the cells you highlighted. Like here in the blue borders, that means you highlighted this cell. For example, if I highlight these cells, for example, F6 to H8, the name box will indicate for you what cells did you highlight. Another thing it can be also used for the name box, it can be also used as search bar or search box for a cell. For example, I wanted to find I-59. I go to the name box, type I-59, and it will instantly highlight I-59 right here. You can also do multiple cells like I showed you earlier. It can be C5 column H10. It will select all the cells indicated in the name box and highlight it for you. Or you can just drag it and you'll be fine as it is. It really depends on what you want. Now next is the formula box. That's next to the name box, which is here to here. Now here, the formula box is another way to type a value in the cell instead of just double clicking the cell. But it can also be made as a code for the value to do things automatically for you. Google Sheets uses JavaScript or JS in short. So if you know how to do it, you'll be able to code it properly, but I cannot teach you that further. That's for you to do, and if you're familiar, go ahead. If not, that's your own research. Now, next, also, you can see the names here. If I highlighted, it's Steam ID and Discord ID. That is called notes. How you do it is right-click, like they say here, press insert note, and type whatever you need. And it has been added, and the note is staying there. You will know there's a note when the cell has a top right triangle corner. And how you delete it, or how you undo it, you can just right-click, delete notes, or if it's your recent action, you can press Ctrl-Z, which is undo. And if you want to add that note again with the same content, press Ctrl-Shift-Z, which redos your last action. Now, the jargon and tutorial's done. Now we go for the roster. Now, the current version of the roster serves as the raw data for the CI database because it takes what we place here to the CI database automatically. Hopefully in the future we will make this also fully automatic, but manual work is required for now. I'll explain in what's in row 5. Now, in row 5, column C is UID. UID acts as a unique ID for the operative, a number for database implementations to be easier, and a way to easily identify who you are without relying on the name. So right here, Allfather has a unique ID of 1, and Sardine's unique ID is 220. And each new entries or each new operative will receive a decrement of numbers going down. So the newest operative will get 279. Now, for the clearance codes, it's called hashtag or number, if you see here. Now, the hashtag is actually called clearance codes, indicated by hovering your mouse to it. It displays a note as well to give a description of how it works. I'll explain it here. It automatically changes based on the rank due to the code implemented in the cells below. Like here, if I double left click, you'll see in the formula box, or if you double left click, it will show you like a box of code. Now, not a good code, to be honest. Could be better. But it serves its purpose for now. And we're not coding a game anyway. For the clearance code, it's not used for Flare, for sure. It can also serve as an auto sorter, depending on how messy the sorting is. Now, for example, these NCOs. Now, let's jumble up a little bit. It looks like this, that, this, and that. If you drag the rows here, it will look jumbled mess, and it might have some time to like rearrange it properly, but you're too lazy to do that. So how we do it, we just need to select the NCO cells from column C. Make sure to not edit these like empty rows. Do not edit this row and do not edit this row. Now select these empty column cells, NCO cells, up to column X. Column C to column X. Oh shit, now I fucked it up. No. Okay, again. Select these. Then after that, right click any area. Sort range. This is very important. Column D. Sort by column D, because in column D it has the clearance code. Then ascending order. Then sort, and it's automatically implemented. For some reason, it's not updating, which will be easily fixed if we do. Interesting. Which can be easily fixed by doing something like this. It's not easy anymore. I am suffering. Welcome back. I solved the problem. It's just refresh, and some of these cells are just empty. If they're empty, you just do something like this. Just drag this. Highlight this cell, drag this little blue circle here, then drag it down. And it's automatically been implemented. Okay, so from that, let's do it again. We just do this. Right click, sort range, column D, ascending, and it's automatically sorted. After that, you can do whatever you want what you're doing. Now, let's go for the next one. Now, rank. Rank is a drop-down list of ranks to place their ranks by their given rank. That's it. It also, the clearance code changes based on the rank what it's assigned. For example, if it's second lieutenant, it will be B3. If it's commander, it will be A1. Again, these are ascending order, the clearance code. Now next is the things that are mostly self-explanatory. But I'll mention some of them, like for example, squad and status are drop down, so you can just double left click, it'll show the drop down list. Promo date, you just need to place the date of month and day. The format is month and day for the numbers. If it has a date here already, you can just double left click, it will be a drop down list of the calendar. If not, for example, this one, it'll just be missing. You just need to automatically input it on your own. And from that, it's automatically been placed. If you don't know when this person was promoted, you can go to the CI database to the promo logs, which we'll see later. Next is the time zone. You just implement their time zone based on their database, the recruitment log. And strikes, it will automatically highlight for you. And notes is just Notes. I recommend just putting the date here. Once the date has been settled, you just right click, insert note, type whatever. And specializations is just tick box. That's it. Now, next is the format. Format is relatively simple to follow. Most, if you look at the toolbar, you will see the four squares icon next to the bucket tool or the merge. That's the table border. It's self-explanatory in what they do. You can change the border width, you can change the style, you can change the color, you can change the border positions, so on and so forth. If you see a cell that does not follow the proper format displayed around here, for example, I remember that this is out of line. Make sure to just go to the border style, pick the thinnest one, press bottom border, depending on what needs to be fixed. It's usually trial and error, so you'll get used to it, that's for sure. Like I showed you earlier, that if you see the UID is empty, like this one for example, in the private, let's say there's more new rows that have been added. If you don't know how to add new row, you just right click, insert row above or insert row below. I'll explain more on that later. Now, if you see the empty UIDs, make sure to select two cells of the column by dragging it down with a little small circle, highlight on the highlighted cells, and drag down, and it's decrementally counting down the numbers. However, if you notice here, it only copied 284. Now, the correct way to do this is to select two cells and drag it down, and this will decrementally count down the numbers. So be careful when it comes to do something like that. Two cells decrementally down, one cell copy the numbers. There are some exceptions, like the code here. Like for example, it's E204 and this one's E205. Now, if I delete this and if I drag it down like normal, this will decrement on the cells. That's the only exception as far as I know. You don't have to do these. You can just do that to decrement the cells down. However, it can ruin the formatting if you want the code to stay in one cell. So I'll explain that further if you want to know more about that. Now next is the important parts. Now you see these empty cells or empty rows like I showed you earlier. That is essentially a buffer zone for adding new rows. So if you want to add another row, for example, the NCO roster is full, right click on the empty row of the NCO, insert row above, not below. Because if it's above, the format will be correct. However, if it's below, the format will be a mess for a little bit. So be careful, depending on the positioning, place it above or below based on what I showed. Don't delete the empty row as well. That'll be pretty bad, I would say. Now, the roster is basically done. Now we move on to squads. Now in CI squads, they're automatic. You know why? It's thanks to the main roster. How? It's because of the code in this cell. Right here in the formula box. Layman's terms. First, it takes the data from the main roster and detects the squad column H. If there is the code word Blackwatch indicated here, where H contains Blackwatch, which H contains Blackwatch, which is there here in the main roster, CI squads will only place relevant data of that main roster and place it all over here. And that's it. That's how the code implements all the values in the empty cells. Sorry. That's it. However, if there's a situation that there is a discrepancy, such as not enough rows, like for example this, it will result in a error-ish. You'll see some weird formatting issues, like you see this red one. But if you delete this one, it will usually not occupy that one since it's not empty. But since it's usually empty or occupied, this will result in an error. You can hover your mouse to see what's the error, which is array result was not expanded because it will overwrite the data C12, which means there's a value in the code or in the empty cells, what this means, the code cannot write over this existing value. So what you need to do is either delete the values of the cell or add new rows. Like either this or this. Now, you see if I do something like that though. Okay, apparently it's not making me a redo. Don't ask me, I have that much tabs. Now, if you notice here, there's a problem. If you hover again, J10. What this J10 is? Checkboxes. And I was like, what? There's value? But there's no value here. Now check again. There's actually a value here. What you need to do is just delete that. Or just do drag and drop like that. Like, oh, another row. Just do something like this instead. And it's automatically fixed. Clean and fixed. So a general rule of thumb, if the shit is automatic, do not place a value in the middle of the code or it will break. Now the roster is done. Now for the database, which is somewhat shorter, so brace yourselves in this one. I also need to fix this though. Welcome to the database. I'll be showing the relevant ones you will use most of the time. So from that, org chart, rank progression, code of conduct, don't care. What we cared about is the timetable. Timetables are basically schedules for the population of 2 to see, you and me. Now, let's start with row 2. In column N to Q, which is right over here, and then Q. It's in this automatic clock, day and date on EST, which is indicated in column O. Now, next is the legend. The legend indicates the color code of the block in the schedule. How you do it is to copy and paste to the most left-hand side of the day columns. Like here, for example, I want this. Then put an empty cell. Let's say I want to put it on 12:30 a.m. to 1 a.m. Control V. Then it's added. Or if you want to take more rows, you can possibly do these. Like let's say I want to take 2 a.m. You just highlight the cells to the empty ones. Then merge cell. And it will take over this one. Remember to add notes. So if it's training sims, CI sims, or so on and so forth, what you want to place. Next is the... Now, how do we delete this? If you want to clean this up, you can just do this. Let's say it takes over 4 cells. 1, 2, 3, 4 cells. We just copy this and Control V. And it's automatically cleaned. However, or it can be another, like, do like this, 2 cells, Control V, it's automatically fixed. Make sure to copy the empty cells, okay? If you notice in column C and row 5, it also specifically highlights green on the current time of EST. Currently, it's 6 a.m. There's no 6 a.m. It's not our opening hours, but once it hits 6 a.m. or, for example, or once it's 12 a.m., this will highlight green, like that. It's a different color of green, but you'll see later on by seeing the timetable itself. And from that, also in row 5, it also highlights the day. So for example, if the day is Monday on column P, the system will detect like, oh, it's Monday, color it green. And boom, it's green. Today's Monday. And whatever is time, that's what's our business hours. And that's it for the timetable. Next is the trainer certs and roster. It is a roster of trainers or other certifications to keep in mind who has the authorization to do stuff or know what to do with it. Now, if you want to place someone in the roster, you just check their UID via roster, which is over here, for example. You just get their number and place the number in the roster. Let's say me, I got 6. And once it's implemented, the code will do everything for you. What the red means is it's because the drop-down list doesn't include the lieutenant colonel. I just need to fix that. But that's it. If you want to remove it, just delete the UID and it's done. Now, what's in the empty cells? Code. Now, code layman's terms. It takes the main roster's data, detects what UID is in this cell in particular, what you implemented, and they will identify that UID, for example 6, and they'll double check like, oh, this is 6. Let's check the roster which specific UID has the content of 6. Like, okay, we found 6. We implement these things to the roster, and it's automatically placed. Easy. Don't have to copy and paste just a single damn number. Very useful. Please don't place a value on the empty cells other than the UID. Now, if there is a case that the row is empty despite the UID implementation, for example, this one, like I showed you before, you just do this, select the empty cells that have the code, drag it down with the small little circle, and it's automatically placed. Just be careful, make sure to double check the code, make sure they're the same except the cells here. C26 because it's highlighting this UID. Then C27 is highlighting this. That's very important. Next is LOA logs. Let me Control-Z this. LOA logs, it is restricted to officers for them to accept. However, there are some easy to follow things like column H and column I. They're just check marks. Like for example here, if it's checked, it will highlight green. If it's denied, it will be highlighted X or denied. Now here is the notes indicated here. If it's ticked, it will show the oldest to newest, and unticked shows the oldest to newest. Wait, what? Newest to oldest. Newest to oldest. Okay, now it's fixed. It will, if it's ticked, it will show newest to oldest. Observe. It will show the newest, which is right now. And oldest, which is months later. Wow, I need to update this. But, however, the check marks will not be, it's not sorted, so I'll eventually deal with that, but nah, for now. Next is recruitment logs. Recruitment logs for checking their details on who got recruited. It's very important to look back if an initiate got promoted to private or someone has their Steam ID/Discord ID missing. So it can be blood, what type of training, Steam ID, Discord ID, time zone, UID, time zone, and the UID of the recruiter. End date. And if it's approved by the officers, usually yes. Next is promotion log. It's for checking who got promoted and looking back to the main roster to update their ranks and add who's going where. So if the NCO got promoted, they'll be moved to like this. Why can't I? Editing is temporarily disabled. Fuck. Okay. We'll show that later. But yeah, if it's an NCO to CO, make sure to drag their rows to the CO roster and so on and so forth. Or just double click and change your rank to PFC, then drag them down whatever they want. Simple as that. Okay, next. Spec logs. It's for those who got the spec instead of saying it in Discord. Remind them of that if they do. Raid logs for statistical purposes. R&D logs for R&D only. And inventory logs are automatic. We're still in deficit. Oh, fuck. Okay. They're automatic except the custom SCP list and usually reserved for officers. However, we have an unchecked info log if the info here is valid or not. So we would like to have someone who can volunteer to check in if they're legitimate or not. If you're interested, make sure to talk to us. Now, task list. Task list is automatic by ascending order of their clearance. This shows like who trained the most. Oh my god. It's usually reserved for officers. Next, performance notes. Performance notes by officers who I should pester to write shit. But they place a date like here, add a note, blah. It usually gives us feedback instead of like directly like dragging you in the call and tell you blah, 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 blah. But we can just write this down and we don't have to like schedule a day. Makes it easier, however, it really depends. Now next is Medals and Hall of Fame. It tells us about their server history and who is awarded for their efforts. I feel like there's someone missing. Someone should tell me who the fuck got what. But yeah, It's also reserved by the officers, but can be volunteered for a clerk to record the history of whatever's going on. Like if you want to add BB pictures, feel free. You can add like a backlog of what happened, which I should update. But if that's what you like, make sure to volunteer. Memorials are memorials honored to those who have served well, / shamed for traitors, and regular memorial for anyone who wants to be commemorated. We serve for officers but can be volunteered by a clerk. Next is archives, containing both the info and historical documents, projects, and so on that we have in CI and Foundation. Foundation, it's automatic by the inventory log based on here what they hacked. And Chaos archives are manual. There's no current checker at the moment and can be volunteered by anyone if they wish. Next is statistics. Statistics is usually reserved for officers, but it takes every info from the database what's logged to the main roster. That's not what I meant. It takes every info from the main roster to the database. Well, I said the same thing. It's correct. It doesn't matter. Okay. Every time the database gets wiped, it's a good idea to check in with the statistics. Like here, the codes, record what they have, and fix any broken codes that they have. Very easy fix by just checking their cells on the spreadsheets, because there are some points where we start to clean up everything and archive whatever we got. The code, it's hidden here. Guess what? It's hidden here. I forgot to tell you that. Sometimes it will say A56. If you notice, there's like none are being logged. Check the code here. If it doesn't say A6, this is very important. Fix it with A6. Now, dismissal roster is a list of operatives who have been dismissed for various reasons. Every time they're removed or moved somewhere, they will be placed in the dismissal for archival purposes. So just copy a row. Let's say I'm retiring. Place it here. Then honorable retired. Now keep this green border the same. This is for the people or an indication that this person hasn't had their whitelist removed yet. Now, if the whitelist has already been removed, make sure to mark them in gray. Then that means that person's whitelist has been removed. Okay. Now, next, the final one is blacklist. Blacklist is a people of who are blacklisted from CI inspects, squads, and their entirety. Consult the officer on why they were blacklisted, or you want to report someone for that. Now, I forgot to mention these LOA responses, or responses in general. These are all the data that we gathered from the logs, the forms, the Google Forms. Everything is here. These are the raw formats. The ones that are organized are the ones with the stars, with the logs. But the ones with the purple sheets look like that. That's the raw data. If you see an error, make sure to edit it like this. And then the recruit, where are you? It's right here. It will be changed as accordingly. However, like every other code that we have, if you type whatever, boom, reference, that's an error. Make sure to delete any data in these cells, okay? Just make sure to check in the code and what's the error. And fix that error. Simple as that. Now, hide sheet. Make sure to hide sheet as well. Every time you use the responses, right click, hide sheet. Now the database is done. Now for the master folder. We're almost done, halfway there, and I'm going to eat. Welcome to the master folder. It contains all the SOPs, sheets, and forms. It can be viewed for anyone and for restricted people. And there's a guide list on which folder who has complete access and some that are restricted in the group chat. Now, let's say this is a district filled with houses. The folders is a big district, the ZPCI, and its content, like here, sheets, forms, docs, is the houses and or rooms and so on and so forth. That's real estate. If we give them access to the keys, the residents, in case it's edit access to the people, for example, this, right click share. These are the people who are authorized. They will have access to the rest of the house or the folders. So instead of placing access to each and every single file manually, we just place their names in the folder and they will have access to every single one of them as long as there is a content inside of them. For example, let's say there's a separate form and it's not in the forms here. Anyone with permissions of here will not be counted to that missing form that's not on the folder. But it will be counted for every single form here to those who got access from it. So keep that in mind. However, some special cases such as restricted forms, only restricted people, like only people with access can open with this link. So just keep in mind from that. Now, last one, contacts. Contacts are basically your phone contacts for Google without the phone. This makes it easier to add people in the docs, forms, folders, and so on that relates to Google Contacts, especially with the tags or specific folders. To add new contacts, we need to import the contacts. So I'll delete all these first, but first let's export it out since we haven't done it. Google CSV, make sure to select all contacts if possible. If it's from Zenit, only Zenit. Export. It'll download, then it's done. Now after that, this is especially when you're updating the contacts for every single one of you. Make sure to delete these. Oh, this is what you're supposed to do. Delete everyone here. Move to trash. Now after that, import contacts, select file, contacts tree, or whatever that's listed as long as you know the version. Import. Just wait, and it's done. Now you can type a label list of people who are responsible for their assigned stuff for the forms, the database, the roster, or the docs, anything at all. This is very important. You know why? Because these are labels. Like Blackwatch, people from Blackwatch are here. Clerks are here. Enforcement, and if they still exist. Explosives, here. Heavies, etc., etc., etc. People who have access to the docs. I'm going to delete this because we don't need, make sure you keep all contacts and delete this label. We don't need the imported on 5.9.29. Like here for demonstration, I want to give docs, SOP, I want to give people from the R&D that are listed in the contacts. I can just type R&D here and everyone in the R&D label will be tagged and they will be given access. So share, and people from the R&D gets it. Like here, Vault and Heimdall. Heimdall somewhere. I can't read, but yeah, he's here. So yeah, and especially, you should also keep in mind, especially if you have someone being removed, let's say there's some, let's say here, there's some instances where the some people are still there, like Supersonic 3535. They're not supposed to have access to the entire thing. So what we do here is make sure to do advanced search, specific person, CI centralized email. We have a centralized email that's restricted to alpha. They have all the documents in hand and they're responsible for everything in here. Now, press search, file type, any file type that you want, but for me, it will be folders. Let all these load. After loading everything, select all of them, right click share, and find the guy named Supersonic. Once you found him and you want to remove all his access, remove access. It'll take a while, but after that, it's basically done. You shouldn't have access to every single one of the folders anymore. Of course, you just need to double check in case his name is still there. If you see supersonic like this one, it might not remove all of them because some of the documents are placed manually instead of doing it on folder. If that ever happens, make sure to remove access. Also remove access. That person doesn't not here anymore. Save. And access has been changed. File type. More, and so on and so forth. Double check. Done. Remove access. Done. That's pretty much it. You just make sure to check in with each and every single one of the forms to see who still has access to the entire thing. This is very important when you're updating who will get the whitelist of the entirety of these forms. But other than that, that's pretty much it. Very important to filter the folders. Very important to filter with documents, spreadsheets, forms, folders. These are very important so you can have an much easier time to remove people's edit access. And from that, everything should be done. Now, that training is finished. If you have any questions for me, you can message me in Discord and TeamSpeak, or if there's someone that's later down the line responsible for this and is the head of it, please ask that person if you have any questions. So from that, the roster is finished and the training's finished, and welcome aboard. You now have access to the database. Good luck out there. See you in the battlefield and the paperwork.